revisit what's on the board and start focusing on actions. Okay, so like Mariana said, what we want to do by the end of this session is really hone in on what specific actions we can take as a group and start to formulate some next steps. So first we'll hear from the speakers who've been in the plenary session, so they have an idea of what's coming. And then we'll move into this broader discussion and collaboration. So, without further ado, I open the floor to our speakers. And Gerardo, would you care to introduce yourself, your connection to the topic, and take it from there? Thank you.
I don't know, do I need this? How does it work?
Is it okay to talk about it? Right. Can he just use this? Or does he? We don't need it, do we?
We're so few.
We don't need the microphone, do we?
Okay. Because they're going to tape it.
I think so, yeah. Here is okay.
Well, I'm Gerardo Bracho. I'm a Mexican diplomat, but also associated to the IDOS Research Institute in Germany. I'm not an expert in the details of finance, but our friend is. So, but I want just to put a general framework, which probably can help. I hope it helps the discussion. And I'm a diplomat to the OECD, so I'm listening to these conversations all the time about finance and sustainable finance. And actually, there's a narrative, and I think there's a narrative, and it's in 5 steps. And the narrative goes like this, and you hear it in the OECD, we heard it here all the time. It's the narrative that we hear all the time. The first step of this narrative is about sustainable finances. Well, first we calculate, no? And we say, well, we have all these agendas, we have to the SDGs, we have to deal with poverty, with climate change, with biodiversity, with green transitions. Where are we going to get the money from? Before we were talking of billions, and now we talk of trillions. We have this axiom, everybody repeats it all the time. We have to go from billions to trillions. That's the first step. The second step is this recognition that all these trillions are there, you know. The money exists, it's down there, but the money is in private hands. The third step on this narrative is that well, it's out there. It's somewhere in banks' accounts, in the banks' accounts of rich people, of pension funds, of institutions. It's not flowing to the places it should flow. Third step. So there's this gap that has to be filled. The fourth step is a quite surprising step, and actually I would have liked for Sonny to be here. Because he was making this point in another lab yesterday. And it's a surprising step because then they say, well, actually, you know, it's not in the places where it should be, but there are all these conditions for the money to flow to these places. For example, in the case of green transition, you can make lots of profits if you put the money in new renewable resources. You could make lots of money if you go to places like Nigeria, where you have the demographics is on your side, there's lots of demand, etc. So this fourth step is a bit strange because if you take seriously the neoclassical theory, the money should all be flowing to these places and we shouldn't be having these bloody discussions, no? But it's not flowing, in fact. So that's a bit strange, even if it should be flowing, because there are all these supposedly very good conditions. So the fifth step is, why is not flowing to these places? Why is the market not functioning? And there's no clear answer to this, because it should be doing, but it's not. So then, okay, we realize that it's not going to where it should go, even if it should be going. That's a very paradoxical thing. And the sixth and last step is, well, what should we do to incentivize this capital to go to the places it should go? And then you have two options. The one option that I think we talk too much about and we're obsessed about, and the neoclassical system is obsessed, is creating the good conditions, creating the environment for the capital to flow to these places. And then, but what do we have when we're creating these good conditions, this environment, these structural reforms? Well, it's like all countries, different sectors are like in a competing beauty contest to bring this capital that's in the pockets of these institutions and those this rich man. And then what we have, of course, sometimes is the race to the bottom. What do? Well, you lower taxes, so they come here and get better profits. Another thing to do is you de-risk. We love this idea of de-risking. That's one option. That's one option, to create the conditions to bring all this capital to different places. But of course, it creates this race to the bottom issue, which is, actually this capital should be functioning, achieving its social function and going anywhere to these places. And the second way, which I think we should also talk about, but I don't think we have talked about much, at least in this forum, is why is all this money in these hands? Why don't we redistribute the money? That's one option, with taxes, for example. And the other option is, why don't we regulate better the way that this money has to be used? And I want to finish with this. I want to recall that in the 1960s and the 1970s, during when we had the Keynesian paradigm I was talking about this morning, we had a much more regulated system, and we had this capital flowing to the places we need to flow. But then what happened? We thought that the markets was going to resolve everything. During the Clinton years, we had this massive deregulation of the financial system. And what happened? We had this massive crisis in 2008 and 2007 because of the regulation. We had a new agenda of regulating, that Obama said that he was going to regulate, that he was going to go back to these rules of the 60s and 70s. He never did that, and we are in the same situation. So just to finish, we have two options to bring this capital where we need it. One option is creating the conditions and giving them all these benefits for the money to flow where we want it, or to regulate and tax. And I think we have not talked enough about this second option. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. My first question to the group here is, why do we need sustainable finance? Can I hear answers? So that then my responses would be better. Why do we need sustainable finance?
Uninterrupted financing, and also the resources mobilized through a good means, I think, not,
Good objectives.
With good objectives, exactly.
Right.
So that could be.
So you're fine. Now I've understood. Any other views, Mustafiz?
Because green transition requires money.
Yeah. No, any transition requires money.
Exactly.
Why green only? You get my question? Yeah. See, our understanding has to be very clear. It is not very clear. Sorry.
Predictability.
Predictability.
Yes.
Yeah. Joseph?
I think nothing is possible without finance.
No, 1 minute.
To begin with.
Let us understand the one. Sorry?
For future generations.
No, that goes without saying. Yeah, that is there in terms of the objects of the works, the activities that you will carry out should ensure that there is intergenerational equity.
Yes.
That is for the activities. What I am asking is, sustainable finance is a means for you to be able to achieve those activities that will help sustainability. Right?
Or can we put it slightly differently? Is it sustainable? That's second stage.
No.
First is financing life.
Right.
Financing sustainable development. From there, sustainability comes.
No, 1 minute. Then often there is a confusion. One is we are looking at financing for sustainable development or sustainable. Because what I understood from both of you was something which has nothing to do with sustainable development per se. You're looking at predictability and availability of finance for any purpose. No. So, well, let's get this, Tom, very clear. This understanding is we are looking at financing for sustainable development.
Yes.
Right, that is what the topic should have been framed in a way that so that we know exactly what we are talking about.
Financing for sustainable development, but that has to be sustainable, you know.
No, that goes without saying. That goes without saying. That is a different question.
So no, that is the predictability.
That is the predictability.
Yeah.
That is what I am saying.
Yeah.
What I am saying is that then let us be clear as to what are we talking about. Are we talking about sustainable finance or are we talking about financing for sustainable development?
Both.
One goes with the other, right? You cannot de-link one with the other, right? Now, at the moment there is a global crisis. It is not only climate but also biodiversity, which is what I said in Action Lab yesterday. We, at the cost of repetition, biodiversity, if you remember, there is a COP also on that, and there was a discussion on that as well. Also running into billions of dollars, and climate you're talking about trillions of dollars. Now, if you add both of them, you're still looking at something like $5 to $6 trillion a year in order to be able to fund projects around the world, particularly in vulnerable countries or countries which have lost due to environmental or biodiversity challenges. There is also a fear that there are many countries which will disappear from the earth if the way it continues. The other day I was reading that Australia has agreed to take citizens from Vanuatu into Australia because they're not sure as to how long Vanuatu will remain on the face of the earth. They will probably get submerged. But let me come back to the point that we are taking. What I am only I highlighted this to show the kind of alarming situation that we are facing. Now, at CUTS, by the way, I mean, we have hands-on experience of working at grassroots level on inclusive finance. That is another very big challenge in the developing world, inclusive finance. People who are poor are not able to access finance at all. That is a major problem in the sense that you are looking at, satisfaction of basic needs is something which you need to understand, as it has an impact on climate as well as biodiversity. If a person doesn't get his basic needs or her basic needs, then it leads to a lot of problems. Now, we have looked at several areas. For example, some of the work that we do, not to advertise, but we're building a lot of check dams, small anicuts, in order to ensure that water is not lost and villagers are able to get some irrigation water. That has an environmental positive benefit. Now, so you're looking at various kind of granular activities which need to be captured as to what is required to be able to fund, or financing has to be raised. I said inclusive finance is one, and that is to even deal with your livelihoods, for example. Cannot ignore livelihoods at all. I mean, it's a part of the sustainable development agenda that we cannot have sustainable development without livelihoods. Let's be very clear about that particular. So what I'm only trying to point out are a few issues which have not been discussed in the manner they could have been discussed in this conference that I've been hearing about. People tend to forget certain very basic problems that the humanity is facing at the grassroots in the global south. I'm talking about global south. I mean, more or less the issues are. Now, many of these problems have happened in the global north. How do we deal with that? That is something, it's a kind of a debate which has been going on forever. that 20% people on this earth have been consuming 80% of the resources, so they are liable to do that, and that is the kind of argument which is being taken up at the high level, at whatever debates that is happening in COP, etc., is the liability or the responsibility of the rich nations in order to fund the kind of problems that are happening in the South, because they have created those problems. The southern nations have not created these problems. Having said that, let me now boil down to go back to the first question which I raised. So we require financing at the bottom level, the grassroots level, in a large number of countries which have suffered from environmental or biodiversity damages or harm. And that is what we need to look at in this, as an outcome of this conference is how do you take this forward? What could be the action points? Now, what we have suggested is at a higher level that, what we have also seen is that rich countries don't keep their promises. Whatever promises they have made at whatever levels, whether it is Addis Ababa, Monterrey, or Rio, etc., if you find they've all failed. None of them, except a few Nordic countries who have maintained their promise. Norway is probably the only country which maintains 1% of. There is a global commitment made by rich countries to have 0.7% of their GNP or GDP, or GNP, I think. GNI, as part of ODA. Now, what is that? Where is that? It's not happening. Britain passed a law to do that, but now they have, of course, they have exceptions because their economy is in a bad shape. So they have now sort of reduced it. Our own contracts with FCDO have been curtailed.
The UK by principle, not because they were in bad state.
Yeah.
They don't want to do it anymore.
I thought it was UK was the only economy going in recession.
Johnson came and said this is a bad idea.
That is happening with all conservative governments. They don't think. Even Sweden lately has cut down development aid drastically. They have a right-wing government. But anyway, that is not the issue we are looking at. What we are looking at is how do we restore this through the narrative has to be continuously built up. It cannot be, we cannot give up that 0.7%. People have forgotten. I think we have to continuously remind people about that. But that has an effect on what you're going to get when it trickles down. Any such project, any such funding, trickles down to the poor in the global south. So that is what we should remember, that when you're looking at sustainable finance or financing for sustainable development, those promises have to be kept, and people have to be reminded that these are the promises you made, because after all, it is what India has put forward in the G20s. That is one family, one future, and so on. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. And we have to remind people about this fact. We have to take a moral stand on this. You can't ignore a moral stand on these kind of issues in order to take it forward. Thank you, Tom. I'll be happy to.
Now, we have 10 minutes left in this session. So we have a very important challenge that we were set in the main room around some of these questions that were raised in your helpful framings, right? What are the actions that we need to take to actually make a dent in these issues, and how can we start to make them tangible? So maybe we have some time for a couple of reflections, thank you. So in your perspective, what are the actions that we need to be taking going forward outside of this room, and how can we work together? So that's the question that we need to come back to the plenary room with. So I leave that open to you now.
Okay, coming to the action, first, you're talking about finance. This could be seen at private finance, multilateral finance, national public finance. These are the three broad categories wherein action should come in. But I'm not going to deal with private finance or multilateral finance. I'm only concerned about public finance within the country. Now, when you're talking about public finance within the country, in a country like ours, when we are talking about India, since India is coming up with the LiFE, we should show it up. We have the moral obligation to show to the rest of the world that here, say, central government and the governments are committed to that, committed towards fostering finance oriented towards life. How do we do that? When you take in India, within the constitutional framework, all what that goes into the behavior of the people, nudging behavior, goes to the state governments. Now, then the point is that you need to have a framework within which the central government should facilitate the state governments to fund, to modulate their budgets in such a way that more life-oriented things are promoted. Here, you can also think in terms of tax as well, tax discounts as well for those which are coming. But unfortunately, what is, at the end of the year, I must even orient towards a life budgeting. Just like gender budgeting, we can even think of what are the number of schemes that are projected in the budget at all the states in the country as well as at the national level, which are oriented towards. And at the end of the day, if you are truly committed to what life you are speaking to the rest of the world, you should be showing in your country that I have a life budget. This is precisely from the public finance perspective. This is precisely, and then you must tell the state government that, look, you are already fiscally stressed. Now the 16th Finance Commission of the country is going to be instituted tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Will you be having this in the one of the terms of reference of the Finance Commission? If you are truly committed when you speak out in the G20 and Glasgow, and if that is not getting reflected right in your home, you are actually talking without content. You are talking without commitment. So I would like to see that this get reflected in the 16th Finance Commission terms of reference. This should get
That's
reflected.
a really good one, yeah.
This is the contextual point going by the constitution. This should get reflected in, for example, in the next budget, saying that when you are talking about FRBM Act in the country, I would give you, say for example, 0.5% or 1% discount if you are working for life. Today there is 0.5% discount for power sector. No, I would.
Can I just add?
Yeah.
Something to you? What is all the Niti Aayog is working on green growth. Can we, merge all this, together, because they all have common.
Unfortunately, in this country, we are known for the right hand not seeing what left hand is doing. With India ASEAN Vision 2020, I worked very hard with RIS in preparing Vision India and the Trinity of the South, the IPSA. And when I was Ministry of Commerce chair, I found that when it went to India-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, even the cabinet secretary, who is my distinguished professor now, has not seen the India-ASEAN Vision document. And you have a commerce ministry going ahead with the FTA without what MEA has prepared on India-ASEAN Vision 2020. We have talked quite a lot about India-ASEAN commodity awards and all.
Sir,
28 points.
You made your point.
Okay, this is the point. I'll stop.
Let's not wash our laundry here.
I'll stop here. Sorry, this is also a problem. I'm sorry. This is.
Because I'm not an expert in financing sustainability, or whatever we want to call it. So the action that you were saying was what? Just remind me.
Point number one. Point number one.
Can I articulate it for you?
You can articulate, please. Yeah, listen. Start at home.
16th Finance Commission,
16th.
along with Niti Aayog.
Which finance commission?
16th. Within the country. No.
This is India.
This is India. We don't
This is India.
understand.
Yeah, this is only for India.
16th Finance
No,
Commission.
we should set a model for the world. Somewhere it should be
Finance
shown.
Commission, like you have natural resource.
This is a theory which. Yeah.
And
Niti Aayog, NITI.
NIT.
I think in Nepal sir, there is a natural resource and in Nepal there fiscal risk,
Double A,
natural resource and
YOT. Yeah.
G for God.
You also
I think it's a commission.
He is from our neighbor.
he's part of the he's part of the
Should
family.
prepare,
He's part of the family, biggest family. We are good friends.
Yeah.
should prepare, Joseph, an action plan.
No, the point is this can be seen at the national level, at the subnational level. Okay.
No, that will cover subnational.
Yeah, right, right.
This process covers subnational.
Yeah, it should be when the.
No, it covers.
Yeah, okay. The point is that within the 16th finance terms of reference, the financing life should be an agenda so that all the states gets into it. Otherwise, nobody will talk about it. We talk in Delhi and in RIS.
And green growth.
No, actually, no. But fact to the case is here. This is India's contribution. Green growth, everybody has talked. Life is our contribution.
Joseph, and just to add to that, what Joseph is saying very correctly is that this then India can then be called a practitioner rather than a preacher. And look,
We are showing it.
practicing
We
what
are
we
practicing it, exactly. And secondly, yesterday I articulated life-oriented innovation system, in fact.
It is like, like we always say, sustainable consumption and production, and then, see the menu are our food here. So,
So the rest of the world can learn from that.
Yeah.
Others can
I
learn.
think
Yes.
let me
India, see, life, we are not for sustainability. We did that life-oriented. It's like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Good.
Question first. Who in this room can help us get to this? Is it us here? Anyone? Yeah, great. How? What are the things that we can do to get to this stage? Like the kind of next steps?
The advocacy.
That's not
Yeah,
bad.
right.
I think RIS should put it with the
Policy
Niti Aayog,
outreach.
of course, now.
Policy briefs, seminars, delegations. In fact, I and Sachin were talking about it just the other day, that we'll have a meeting with the finance minister. In her last budget speech, Joseph, you
But the
remember,
matters, yeah.
she was talking about green growth.
Yeah.
And either Suman Berry is talking about green
Yeah,
growth.
yeah.
What are the steps they're taking, we don't know.
And secondly, as Professor Mehta rightly said now, this should get reflected in our next budget.
Yeah.
Not green growth, life. We spoke loud in the global forum. Now we are all countries, we are all thinking on.
Let us look at it
my
together.
action points are related to it. So, can I share that?
Joseph,
In
let
the-
us look at it together because they are cognate subjects.
Yeah.
Can I share this 2 points?
Cognate.
Yeah,
They're not same.
they're complementary. They're.
Cognate.
Yeah,
Not
complementary.
complementary.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
We have 5 minutes before I'm being told to bring everyone
No,
back.
I'm trying to.
No, it's good. Yeah,
Trying to hear that.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, just we are
This
talking.
one output will be fantastic.
We are talking about the
At least for India.
life,
For the world.
life economy and
For the
sustainable.
world, I mean, we
The
create a
budget,
replicable.
I would see at the global level what is called life budget is coming. Life budget. Life-oriented budget, life budget.
Let's
Gender
hear
budget,
that.
gender budget,
Joseph.
life budget.
Please let all the the participants here to give an chance to speak.
Exactly. Sorry about that.
Nobody should be left behind. Nobody should be left behind. Yeah. Just we are talking about the sustainable finance. I represent from least developed country. From Nepal. So we have
Well,
we have
soon become a developing country.
So we also have our own perspective, right? When we are talking about the global development, and we have some concrete suggestion. I also represent from civil society organization, not from academic institutions. I don't know. It is very difficult, but I have some suggestions, some queries also. Can we cut off security budgets, military budgets? And if we have lack of finance in development finance.
Tax and regulate.
No. First, I am talking about the cut off military budget. Cut off military budget or security
No,
budget.
but what you are saying.
No,
is-
just don't intervene. Let me speak. After that,
carry
you
on,
can
please.
defend. You can
Sorry,
defend.
sorry.
You can comment.
Carry
First,
on.
let me speak. When somebody is speaking,
please
don't
carry
intervene.
on.
Okay. Sorry for that. Number one. Number two, tax reform. The UN is performing. UN is pushing to establish one tax body under the UN, and there should be the very strong tax body under the United Nations.
Tax what?
Tax body, tax that regulate the
Body,
whole tax,
body,
tax
body.
body, tax body, because what we are saying that, we have to control illicit financial flow. From that, from that source, we can generate lot of development finance. So this is my second suggestion. And the next is reform international MDBs, reform in MDBs, like World Bank and the IMF, those institutions should be more democratized. This is my suggestion, this is my suggestion. And there should be the equal voting rights, very clear, equal voting rights of all the members of the members countries. And the next suggestion is debt justice. Debt justice. We also want to promote the debt justice. Climate. When we're talking about the climate justice, without debt justice, it is not possible. We cannot achieve climate justice without the debt justice, because 53 countries, in the world, 53 countries, they are in a debt trap, according to the, statistics of the UN. So the debt justice, we also propose for that. And then the capacity development of all tiers of the government, that is very important. We are only talking about the capacity of the national government, If we can provide supports to the local governments and the province or the regional governments, we can generate a lot of money. They can be used for the sustainable development finance. And the next point I want to draw that attention, that the special drawing rights, that is manipulated by the rich countries. That is because the most many countries, they are highly affected by the climate change, negative impact of the climate change. So special drawing right, that should be focused to those countries who are directly affecting by the natural calamities and those way. And the next point, as Dr. Pradeep has already mentioned, there are some international commitments to provide 0.7% GNI by the developed countries, and the $100 billion for the climate, and that should be ensured. That should be ensured. And the next is the loss and damage fund. And many developed countries, they are reluctant. They are not showing their interest to support that idea. Loss and damage fund, which is talking in the COPs. These are some points I want to suggest if we really want to achieve the LiFE economy. Sustainably.
Can I just give a few responses on MDB reforms? There is a G20 expert committee by Larry Summers and N.K. Singh, which has already made many of these suggestions, and the report is now in sort of it's discussion. But politically it's not difficult, but it's not easy also. Let's see how it progresses. Then at 0.7% is something which I think we should raise the voice again. What is the action point you would suggest? How do we take it forward?
All those are action.
There should be some discussion.
The points which you have raised are all well known.
No. You see, if I can compliment what my friend said. I think as least developed country.
What would you suggest as an action like
yes,
we suggested?
Yes. For example, he has mentioned about illicit financial flows.
Yeah, right.
This goes to some countries, isn't it?
Correct.
It is going from our country, but going to some country. They don't ask where from this money is coming, because if it is coming as an investment, okay, fine, it is coming to our country. So we want, that there has to be some rules when some money comes. What is the source? What is the legality?
There's an OECD discussion very strongly going on this.
Yeah, we want that discussion to come to an end. From Bangladesh, for example, every year $7 to $8 billion is going out.
Correct.
It is going to somewhere, and no question asked. In Canada, all the houses are being bought by Bangladeshi, these politicians and bureaucrats.
By the way, illicit financing includes a lot of terrorist financing also.
No, yes. So I think that, in Dubai, 11,000 members are Bangladeshi
what
companies.
Is the action point?
Action point is that
should be a closure.
not only from the supply side, but also from the demand side, you will have to, there has to be some global agreement that we will ask the source of money when it comes to our country. That is the action. So this is one.
Regulation. It's a regulation.
Regulation.
Global regulation.
Global regulation.
We're talking about people in this room, like what we can do, and people who are part of this conference. But a question is like, who else needs to be drawn in to help us do this? I'd just like to ask that to you now and see if you have any suggestions.
No, it has to be, OECD conversations.
Governments
And
governments.
And the governments. Yes,
okay,
yes.
so that's the influencing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Without them, we cannot do that.
They should be inside the room.
One second.
And
The next step for us is to make the invitation to the network and see who wants to organize together for this.
we are advocacy. We are doing advocacy. For
And that would be
this.
something new to what you're all doing.
No, 1 minute. Mr. Bisalur is a very respected researcher. The point, Mr. Bisalur, that in advocacy we require solid evidence
Facts.
rather than rhetoric.
We have the evidence.
Yeah, so let's go with the evidence.
Yeah. Global Financial Integrity Report.
Yeah, there are so many reports.
So many
reports.
Another tool is op-eds.
Pardon?
Op-eds, articles, they have a very good narrative building and influencing effect.
Yes, it's,
Okay, and sorry, yes, here, you had a contribution.
Are you, Barsha, you're going to mention something new because we are running out of time.
Okay, I'm just sharing my experience and particularly with regard to public finance. What
Okay.
during budget. Okay. So I've got very good and very enlightened friend over here. That's why maybe I get some sort of solutions. That's why I'm just sharing few of the problems. Well, now we started a new development framework, and we call it GREED. That's Green, Resilient, and Inclusive Development Framework.
Green,
Resilient, and Inclusive Development Framework. That's the GREED.
Grid framework.
GREED framework. And under GREED framework, we try to promote green economy. And out of that, one component of that promoting green economy is green vehicles transportations. And we have exempted taxes to electric vehicles. And this year, the total contributions of fossil fuel, tax on fossil fuel, and also petrol and diesel vehicles. Its total contribution in our revenue it's about 12%. So we are going to, if from EV, we are just getting 2% of our, so we are going to lose 10% of our revenue because of, promoting this green vehicles. So how we are going to, get resources, compensate that losses, that is one issue. And again, another issue is we have this grid framework for development, but the problem is how are our development partners are going to align their support in our framework. That is another challenge we are facing. And the third challenge is that's the increasing social security expenditure. If you look at our expenditure pattern and composition of our expenditure maybe in the last 10 years, that expenditure in social security, it has increased by 3 times. So I think that's not going to be sustainable. So how to address those channel. And another important is development finance, from our development partners, that is basically determined by geopolitics.
Yeah.
So here, in order to address that issues, I think we need to move from bilateral development assistance to multilateral development assistance. So that I think multilateral would be more neutral than bilateral. So maybe bilateral development partners, if they put money in multilateral form, and if you get resources from multilateral forum, I think that's going to be neutral. So these are the few issues I just wanted to share and
Do
get.
you have any action point?
Oh, okay, I'm asking you, I'm an action point from
action
you.
point. Why did you suggest
I'm just, I put my problem in the table, and now I expect
This is not a seminar. This is a workshop. This is not a seminar.
No, I mean, it's the workshop.
Lot of
That's why I put my problem. Okay, I expect actions and solutions.
A lot of
This
people
problem.
confuse workshops with seminars. This is not a seminar, Roshan.
Okay, we're just very tight.
It's a lab. It's a lab.
Okay,
One more point from
Since we talk about the financing, so we forget about the spending side. So I would say that we should talk about the spending and also budgeting part. And we have already mentioned that along with the inclusive financing, we should talk more about the decentralized financing. Decentralized financing. So, my action point will be that the local governments should be given more power in terms of finances, in terms of policy making, and it is not happening, at least in India. So I have the, example for India, but in some parts of India it is happening because of different reasons, like in Kerala. So, and then we talk about the financing, so I don't know whether, it is relevant or not. But what about the community level financing? Like, I being a Muslim, I find that there is a compulsory zakat and ush on the income of the individuals, and that is not being discussed actually. Like, I individually, calculate and give it for charity, so like many people are doing it. So that part also should be included in the discussion.
Is it not a cultural issue? Is it not a cultural issue?
So, no, we need to...
Cultural, not religious issue, community issue.
So I have one more important question for you in terms of this action. Who in this room wants to be involved in facilitating this specific action? Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do it.
So what I will do is just take...
As I said, I just spoken to Sachin about this just the other day.
That's really good.
You mean the advocate, this?
Yeah, this whole,
Influencing in order
idea
to
which
get
Joseph
the
came.
TOR. Yeah. So
We were
hands up
earlier
who-
thinking of Niti Aayog, now we will include the new finance commission also in that.
Anybody on this
And,
side wants to be
and maybe
involved
we'll
in
get NK Singh to lead it, Our,
It was nice.
he's effective.
Your name's up on this, just so everyone knows. So I'm just going to take
I
a picture of
could
your
not get your point actually.
So,
See,
hands up, who wants to be involved in facilitating
yeah, I want to
this?
be.
Okay, amazing. So I'm just going to take a picture of your badge so that we can tell if you turn around. Just that's fine. I want to be involved, but I'm anonymous and I've got your guys' name. So anyone here? Because Gallery, the new partnership is going to follow up with people on how we can actually bring these things to life.
This idea will take a lot of effort, but it's a very structural issue. Very structural issue, it can do a lot of change.
Okay.
But those of you tend to forget that our states are fiscally irresponsible, undisciplined.
Who is disciplined? Who is disciplined? Do you think the center is disciplined?
Who?
Do you think the center is disciplined?
Thank you so much for everything. I know it's really hard to get your opinions in and your perspectives,
I'm working for the state government.
now we can go
I can hear that.
to the main room, okay?
And you have
We're going to the main room.
62%
Yeah, so we're
of
going to
the
get everyone
total
else's
revenue
So
of the
thank
country
you.
goes to central
And
government.
thanks to our speakers, thanks
And
to
there's
everyone for
expenditure
contributing. There's such little time that we have
That's
as well.
No, we've got one good outcome. Yeah. Sir.
NK Singh's finding.
2% of the revenue is taken by the center.
I know.
And they take only 37% of the expenditure. Then you say that states are indisciplined.
So Joseph sir, it is also including the cesses in 67%?
Sharing.
Sharing only, na? But
Sharing 19% is cess now.
exactly, that is the biggest
And
problem.
actually, only 29% is shared.
Exactly.
Between states.
Yeah, back to the main.
Not a good thing.
पहिला शून्यदेखि 100 होइन 0 देखि 100 सम्म एउटै थियो अहिले 0 देखि 50 लाई 3 राख्यो 50 देखि 100 लाई